Again. All right, I'll let everybody get get connected to their audio quickly. Hello, everyone. So great to see so many familiar names, and Zoom boxes names and whatnot. So thank you all for joining us today. Let's see, I'll put this in speaker mode. All right, hi everyone. So great to see you all. So we're recording the first part of the session. My name is Samantha Bruno. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Career Services at the Marxe School. I'm here with my colleague, Suzanne Grossman. And today we're very excited to have an alumni career chat with Jael Henry. He MPA 2021. He is the director of Beyond Diversity Strategies and the Raben Creative at the Raben Group. So today, how today's going to work is that we have a few set questions at the beginning, and then we're going to open it up at the end. We will stop recording it at the towards the middle of the session so that we can have an open conversation. So. Without further ado, Jael, please introduce yourself. We're very excited to have you.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Jael Henry, he, him. I am a director in the Raben Group's Beyond Diversity Strategies practice in our Raben Creative branch as well. I am originally from a small island in the Caribbean called Dominica. The more I talk, the more you'll hear my accent. But that's one of my favorite things about myself. I moved to Harlem when I was 15. I've lived in that community ever since. I am a graduate of Stony Brook University. I got my BA in journalism with a concentration in public policy there back in the mid 2010s. And then I got my master's of public administration from the Marxe School at Baruch back in 2021. Before I worked at the Raben Group, I was a producer at Sirius XM, where I worked for around 4 years, producing everything from like sports programming towards the end of my career there, focusing on political talk shows. Very excited to be here with all of you and looking forward to this conversation.
Great, thank you so much. That's actually a lot more than I even knew. Like, I didn't even know that you're coming from Sirius XM. That's great. But I think this also kind of leads into, we were talking about it earlier, that you're not currently on LinkedIn, but we'll get into that a little bit later here. So I'll just start off with like my first question here. So, you found roles in your career and throughout grad school that incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, from the CUNY incubator to now. So I guess like my first question is, how have you concentrated your job search, like as you have been securing these positions, and how do you what comes first when you're searching for a position like this?
Great question. So I think I had to like take it all the way back to when I was applying for undergraduate programs. So at first, when I was going to college, I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. That was like my goal. I wanted to tell the stories of people from communities like mine. When I first moved to America, and I would always tell people I'm from Dominica, they'd be like, the Dominican Republic. And I'm just like, no, we're our own thing. We're our own people. We have our own stories. But there are so many groups of people and islands, just based on where you are in the world, that people really don't know that much about you, or they don't know your stories. And like that was one of the driving factors for me going into undergraduate school. And somewhere along the way, I got into producing radio. I was a community director at WSB 90.1 in Long Island during my undergraduate career. And then like that opened up a lot of different doors for me. So I ended up taking the radio broadcasting producing route. But at some point along the way, it still felt, even though I enjoyed what I did and I was good at what I did, I wasn't making the impact that I wanted to make. And like that made me want to go into teaching. So I was producing shows on the weekend and I was teaching Mondays through Fridays. And being in classrooms was an amazing experience for me. And I think it was an amazing experience for like just my professional career in general. But while I was there, it made me think about the macro change instead of the micro change. And that inspired me to pursue my graduate degree at the Marx School, among other things. But I think from the different careers that I had, whether that was teaching, whether that was producing, whether I got my first roles when I was an undergraduate student doing like media work or producing radio shows at that small station in Long Island. Racial like equity and like justice was always at the center of everything for me. When I was going back into teaching, I really wanted to go to a school where it was part of my community. So I taught at Harlem One in Harlem, and then it was a bunch of little Black boys and girls, and like, a lot of my students never saw a Black male teacher in their classroom before. And then just like those little things have just always been like driving forces for me. And then wherever I go in my career, like I've always tried to find ways to incorporate like who I am as a person and like the things that drive me into what it is that I want to take out of my career. When I first started the Raben group, I started there as an associate, and I could have went to other places and just did straight up public relations work or straight up communications work, and started in a different position. But like I really wanted to go over there because of some of the amazing work that they were doing. Um, Working with different like progressive organizations and working across with different corporations to push equity work, to push racial justice work, and focus on DEI work in the different areas around the firm. And I wanted to go there and like learn and grow and like build my skills. And I was able, luckily, to tie the skills that I had with in media and producing and telling stories into the skills that I was developing in DIJ and being able to tell people stories in a way that was like inclusive, but in a way that could like shape hearts and minds and like move people to action. And like that's really important for me. So along the way, just tying it all back up, because I feel like I've been talking for a minute. Um, I've been focused on keeping like my core values and figuring out the ways that I can use the skills that I've developed over the years to use them to like advance equity and operationalize equity.
That was I don't mind the long-winded because that's a really great tie and actually a really good segue to my next question. So I guess along with that, like, what advice do you have for someone that doesn't necessarily have DEI written out in their job description, but wants to carry it out in their career as part of their personal philosophy?
Mm-hmm. Another great question. Right now, I think it is a very difficult time for DIJ practitioners and like DI in general. Um, with everything that's been happening with in Florida, with the things around affirmative act, well, the lawsuit around affirmative action in July, 13 Republican state attorneys general put out a letter to Fortune 100 companies warning them about like D&I programs that they have. And I think earlier this year, when a lot of tech companies were doing layoffs, a lot of the jobs that went first were DI careers and positions that they had at their companies. Um, and these are things that I know a lot of practitioners and people who do racial justice work are keeping top of mind. But there are always going to be ways to make an impact. Um, Thinking through of the different campaigns that there are to build pipelines around bringing more Black and Brown and other BIPOC folks into the teaching profession. One of the things that I worked on at my job last year was working with the CFP Center for Financial Planning Board around diversifying the financial planning industry. And like there are different ways that you can work with folks to build inclusion, to diversify industries, to like bring resources into communities, and still keep in mind at the same time that there is an attack on like DEI all around the country right now.
Yeah, I absolutely hear what you're saying. And actually that leads like I know you read the questions before because it's like a great segue to the next question that I have for you. So like in your role, I know you work with clients that span different sectors. So you know, there's private, public, nonprofit, for-profit, etc. Um, how does your work vary when working with clients across different sectors? And I guess what are some things that remain the same?
So I will say that every organization, whether they're a corporation, whether they're a nonprofit, whether they're a foundation, they all go into DEIJ work from different places. Um, Even with that, I think a lot of corporations, given the attacks, some of them try to focus their work within DEI around like the business case for it. So if we make our organization more inclusive, what will that mean for the culture? How will that help folks within our organization increase like their input, and maybe they might want to stay longer? And foundations or nonprofits may come from it from a different perspective as well. One of the great things about working at my firm is that we don't necessarily just do the straight up DEI facilitations and trainings. Um, we really focus a lot on systems change work. So we can give you all the tools. But if your organization doesn't fix the things inherently within it that will create spaces for folks to bring in more people of color into different positions, to support and like build that pipeline of like diverse talent, then folks having the tools won't necessarily make the difference that you want it to have, that you want to have within your organization. So yes, we do the facilitations, we'll do the trainings, but we're really focused on like system change work as well. And even within like the DIJ comms aspect of it, it's like helping folks to like message to diverse communities, and helping folks to figure out ways to tell their stories in ways that inspire others to move to action. All of those are just important, and they're all part of like the equation to help bridge that gap and make a difference.
Great. Yeah, I love what you kind of said there. It's like about, if we're coming in to help change the culture, like but or coming in to help, I guess, facilitate something, are they thinking beyond of how it's going to change culture if like we weren't there? I think that's a really important aspect that you bring up. It's like there is a partnership when it comes to this work with whatever role that you're playing and whatnot. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of a pivot here because we are doing an alumni career chat. We do want to reflect a little bit about your time at Baruch, and we know you were very active in the Marxe community. You were in the MPA club and in the CUNY DEI incubator. Can you tell us a little bit about your time? Well, one, what pushed you to kind of take on these leadership roles, and two, what have you learned from them and carried from them to your current role?
So I gained so much from Marx. Um, Not just the education, not just like the MPA at the end of my last name. I think I created lifelong friends from that program who pushed me during the program and who still push me now, to and in the way that like I think about the world, the way that I talk about the world, the things that I strive for in my career. um, the MPA club program, well, the MPA club itself, um, when I got involved in it was the summer of 2020. I think the club had hiatus, and there wasn't any leadership for it. And before the pandemic made us start taking classes online, I did have conversations with like some of like my grad school friends about possibly bringing it back, and we were having those conversations then. But then with everything that happened that summer, from the pandemic to the murder of George Floyd to everything else in between, it felt that there was a gap and that needed to be filled. And there were conversations that could have been had and should be had if we can like organize and bring students together to have it. And we saw that gap. Myself, Kelly, Kelsey, Michael, Joanna, and then like we created a community that was in a hiatus, and a community that was looking for an outlet to have those conversations. And the work that I think that came out of it was really important, not just for the MPA club, but for the Marx School as well. And even within like the DEI incubator, what I loved about that experience so much, it was folks who were making change and had influence in their own spheres around CUNY. And then we were coming together to figure out ways that we could like partner with each other, but also like support each other. One of the things about doing DEI work is, especially as people who hold marginalized identities, is that it is emotionally taxing. There are a lot of things that happen along the way, different like microaggressions that you might face, things that will for a fact trigger you. But it's like being in community with folks who understand and folks who get it and folks who want to make a difference. Like that inspires you and pushes you to continue going. And then at times, like having people that you can be in a restorative space with is really important to one, can push you to continue to do the work, but to help you like expand your thinking around the work that you're doing as well. Now, like even just like uh, Dr. Gary Dillon, for example, like he created a program that was, I think it was called Black Mental Health Matters. And then around the time that he did, it was like such an important program to create. And I think it had a lot of impact on like the Baruch community. But working with folks like that who are always thinking and putting others first, and like thinking of ways to support the community and to have hard conversations is really important for not just the folks within that group, but for the CUNY system as a whole.
Absolutely. And just, as you were saying that, like, I mean, so I was also in at Marx as a student at the same time as you were. Like the first thing that kind of came to mind was, so, and this is a plug for Sonia Jarvis's class on intergroup dialogue. Like that is a class that really teaches you to kind of hold the space for, like, recognize your identities, recognize other people's identities, hold the space for both you to be an ally and to recognize in the ways that you could be a better ally and whatnot. And I do appreciate you kind of recognizing and really putting out, giving the props to CUNY for holding those spaces for people, because it's very easy to put out a blanket statement, but it's much, there's a lot more work that goes into putting the action behind it for sure. Yeah. So my final question before we open it up to do the Q&A is, because of course I have to ask this question. Is there any class or assignment or professor that you reflect on at Marx that has really helped you kind of bolster your career? Is there something from a classroom that you're like, you know what, that actually did come to fruition?
So many, so many. But you mentioned Professor Jarvis, and I was I was her research assistant for a year and a half. And the things that I learned while working with her were so invaluable. I cannot even put a value on the things that like I learned from her, and like being in space with her and like soaking in all of her knowledge, and the things that she's done over her career has been spectacular. Like just being able to like be in space with someone like that and to learn from them and to learn from their lessons, and the things that her and her generation did, And then her passing those things down to me, that I could like hopefully one day just have like a minuscule, just a small bit of the impact that she's had. Uh, that was so incredible for me. And it's one of the things that I take the most out of the program. Like I had so many amazing professors, Professor Nigo Hernandez, um, Alexis Perota, so many others that I could name. But my experience being Professor Jarvis's like research assistant, I think that changed not just the way that I thought about the work. When I say the work, I mean like racial justice work, but I think it changed like something in me as well. So like those are things that I will like always hold on to, and I will always be grateful to her for that opportunity.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Jael, for sharing your little bit tidbits of knowledge. So at this time, I'm going to stop the recording. Anyone watching this, we look forward to seeing you at future events and to connecting with Jael in the future. So, yeah.